Hello from the Dukascopy TV studio in Geneva. We're talking about microcredits and how does the microcredit landscape change with Professor Jean-Michel Servet. He is professor at the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva. Professor Servet, welcome to the studio.
Good afternoon, thank you.
So once the microcredits have been called a revolution, but your book now is called The Real Microcredit Revolution. Can you give an overview? Where do we stand in the process of microcredits being used as an instrument to boost developing economies today?
30 years ago, there were only 15 million clients. Nowadays, there are 200 million clients. So it's a huge development. But during the last 2 or 3 last years, the number of clients is diminishing, specifically the number of poor clients. So we are in a stage where people are saying, what is the future of microcredit? Is it possible to have a new growth of the system? Are we in a stage of diminishing position? Or are we just, in a stage with no huge development? And there are crises of microcredit in Bosnia, there were crises in Morocco, in India, in Nicaragua, for example. So the people didn't want to reimburse the loans. So 20 years ago, there were the motto, the success of microcredit, the people are reimbursing the loan. So we are in a new situation of microcredit.
You're intending that so many promise that the microcredit wave has created are not met so far. Actually, what's next now? What do you think?
The promise of microcredit was, as Yunus said, we can, with small loans, put poverty in the museum. And in fact, there are no huge increase of the income of the people receiving loans. So it's 5 years ago, we were publishing some article 10 years ago about this argument, and there are few people who accept this argument. But nowadays, a large part of the community is accepting this argument that microcredit is not a means for diminishing poverty. It's a means for financial inclusion, which is quite different. And the question is financial inclusion a good solution for fighting poverty? In some situations, bad loans, can increase poverty. Why? Because a large part of the microcredit industry is not giving loans for productive purposes, but for consumption. There are consumption loans. And if you have consumption loans with 30, 60, 100% a year of interest, how it's possible to diminish poverty, So there are some people saying financial inclusion is bad. I don't think so. I think we are in a financialized society. So it's impossible, from my point of view, to reverse the situation, to be in a lot of local and global relations are developed thanks to finance. So we need to change finance, but we don't need, from my point of view, to refuse finance. And perhaps what a large part of the population need is not credit, it's saving, it's transfer of funding, it's insurance, it's local current complementary currency, it's guarantee fund, insurance, many things like that. It's not credit, specifically the most poor part of the population.
So microcredit has led to financial inclusion, you say, but not necessarily eradicated poverty so far. This is also a given. So how would we move on from here? Is there a new way for microcredit? Are there new methods to eradicate poverty or to better go into a sustainable development?
I am not sure that finance is a good means for eradicating poverty. For eradicating poverty, you need education, you need health system, you need roads, you need transportation. This is the main roots of the eradication of poverty. But people need finance. It's impossible to have a normal life in our societies without finance, even for the poor. But the problem is it normal to give a loan, a consumption loan for poor people? It's costly for this kind of people. Insurance is very important. Health insurance is very important. This is a financial relation. But if you developed health insurance without developing health system, hospital, medical doctor, nurses, it's not a success. So, we need education, for example. And people with better education, I think they manage better their finance relation. So, I think we need finance, but we need a lot of other solution for the eradication of poverty. And we need to know that a large part of the population in the world is not poor, but they have no access to financial services because they are in a remote place, etc., etc. So there are the poor and there are the non-poor also. So it's a reason it's possible to develop a profitable microfinance with this kind of population.
So are we now at the end of microfinance ideas? What would be the next step to really ensure that the financial inclusion also leads to a positive outcome in terms of poverty reduction?
I hope there is the people are taking account of the failure of the system. I'm sure they need to. A large part of the supposed to be alternative finance is not social alternative finance. It's just managing, the risk of the financial system. So we need to think about that. It's very important because we are using term as alternative. A lot of people are thinking about alternative as a social-based system, but it's not a social-based system. It's a very profitable system. And I think if we want to develop financial inclusion in a large part of the population, it's difficult to think that it could be very profitable. I think it's like water, it's like transportation. People need water, need medical system, needs transportation. Do you think it could be only profitable system? We are in the same world and we need this kind of services for many people.
Let me just ask you the last question. How actually fit NGOs, non-profit organization, into your ideas or in the future of financial inclusion, say, or the micro credit idea? How do you see their role changed? Are they facilitating these ideas that you just mentioned?
The problem is that nowadays a large part of the big company of microcredit are not non-government organizations. They became bank. And the majority of the credit is done by banks. And so there are the transformation of non-government organization into bank. In the Morocco crisis, for example, in Morocco there are only foundation and non-government organizations. There are 12 organizations. And it was not a protection against the crisis, you know, because there were a huge competition between the organization. And if you have a huge competition between organizations, the result is very often a crisis. This is the result of the competition if you have no regulation, etc. So I think we need to rethink what is a non-government organization nowadays. And I think the non-government organization and the cooperative system, the mutualist system, can be the route for the reinvention of money and finance as a common good. This is, so what means common good? It means democracy in economics and finance. It means community in charge of the management of the financial system, etc. I don't know the future.
Professor Jean-Michel Servet, thank you very much for being here and sharing your ideas with us.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for watching. Do make sure to keep clicking back on the Dukascopy TV website for latest updates and exclusive interviews. Have a great day and see you next time.